I call the member for Fadden.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Speaker. I rise to reiterate the Coalition's bipartisan support to the government in our nation's fight against extreme Islamic terrorist elements within Afghanistan. I thank the Minister for his statement and acknowledge that he, again, is true to his word to keep the Parliament up to date with how our fighting men and women are going and how the military and political strategy is holding its course. Like the Minister, we understand now the winter snow is thawing and the rocky peaks of Afghanistan are once more showing their craggy edges. We understand that insurgents, mostly Afghan Taliban, are now creeping back into the valleys and population centres. By all accounts, Australia's legendary infantry and cavalry patrolling has weakened the insurgents, weakened their hold on the population sentiments. But we also acknowledge our enemy is tough and they are resilient. We fight where they live. We fight where they've exerted control for many, many years. And we know from bitter experience they will not give up easily without a fight. And we as a nation know that our fighting men and women will not yield. They will ask no quarter and they will provide none, that they will do their duty as they have done for over 100 years. The traditional fighting season has begun. The poppy harvest is wrapping up. Our nation needs to prepare for a hard fight ahead. As Australians, we look from the safety of our homes with a mixture of awe and thanks to the over 1,500 Australian troops in the Afghan theatre and many more in the wider Middle East area of operations, those who've taken the fight to those who would do us harm. I personally thank the mentoring task force based on the 5th Battalion commanded by my classmate, Lieutenant Colonel Darren Huxley, for their superb service over a very difficult period over Christmas. Many of these men and women are stationed in the forward operating base in Tarankout and in 13 remote patrol bases deep within Uruzgan's numerous valleys. Theirs is an especially tough fight. It's therefore encouraging to hear the Minister genuinely use the word optimism. We all know much work needs to be done, and we shouldn't fool ourselves into believing that the hardest times have passed. We need to continue to hold our nerve and strengthen our resolve. The Minister quite rightly has reflected that the biggest event since his last statement in March has been the death of the world's #1 terrorist and criminal, Osama bin Laden. At its outset, it is important to note that his death in itself does not end our fight in Afghanistan. It's merely one more piece, albeit a significant one, in a complicated puzzle. The Minister in his update highlighted the reaction of US citizens to the news of the death of Osama bin Laden. He noted the death had particular significance to those affected by the terrible acts carried out on September the 11th, 2001. In particular, for those who lost loved ones from attacks on the World Trade Center in New York, the Pentagon outside of Washington, and those who lost their lives on Flight 9-3 in Shanksville, Pennsylvania. Indeed, it has special significance for all freedom-loving people across the world, but certainly no more than those who had lost loved ones. Whilst the global response has been one, I would argue, of relief mixed with a sense of closure, it should be remembered that al-Qaeda, led by Osama bin Laden, has been responsible for the death of over 3,000 people in over 90 countries, responsible for the death of over 100 Australian citizens and numerous more people, particularly thousands of those of a Muslim faith. As such, we understand people's responses will be different. As those personally touched by this degree of evil may feel a degree of closure, for those further from the epicentre of this criminal act, we perhaps breathe a sigh of relief as we acknowledge a world free from one less evil. However, there are those that may seek to use bin Laden's death to further their jihadist cause. For this reason, we must not let our gaze slip from the objective of ridding Afghanistan of those insurgent elements and the terrorism threat they pose to our way of life. Naturally, the discussion about the death of bin Laden involves a discussion about Pakistan. I was very pleased to hear the Minister echoing the words of our political leaders in urging great caution before drawing any conclusions upon Pakistan. It would indeed be unconstructive to withdraw our support from Pakistan, a nation which exists within a region that remains fragile and susceptible to the influence of extremists. The situation in Pakistan is complex, The investigation into bin Laden's ability to hide away in Pakistan remains ongoing. It's important to note Australia has a long history of engaging with Pakistan, from training military and exchange programs through to aid and development assistance. Long may this constructive relationship with Pakistan continue. I acknowledge in the budget, and indeed the Minister's announcements, that there's $1.2 billion for operations in Afghanistan and the wider Middle East area of operations. And I also acknowledge the introduction in the past 12 months of the enhanced force protection capabilities. And I thank the Minister for providing regular updates on those over 40 capabilities and how their introduction into service and into theatre is going. There's still much to do. The Minister acknowledges it. We agree. But we note a further $480 million being spent in 11-12 financial year to further these capabilities. Whilst I'm yet to personally trial the new tiered body armour system, I have been critical of McBass, the modular body armour system previously used. I am led to believe, and I look forward to trying personally, the new tiered body armour system is a far superior way of using body armour. I also look forward to the troops testing this on the ground. Its introduction into service and the speed with which the Minister has got it into service is welcome. And I look forward to its wider introduction across the military, not only into the 2nd Battalion of the Royal Australian Regiment preparing to deploy, but also to the 8th 9th Battalion and of course Old Faithful, my old battalion, the 3RAR, as they subsequently prepare to rotate into theatre. There is no doubt that as much time with new equipment is clearly the preferred option before deploying into a theatre of operations. The Minister spoke about the success of the CRAM, the counter-rocket artillery and mortar system that's been installed within Afghanistan to provide precious seconds of early warning for our fighting men and women. It's a critical system and its installation is welcomed wholeheartedly by the Coalition. I'm thankful that those opposite indeed heeded the Coalition's urgent call to install a CRAM system, and I certainly thank not only the current Minister but Minister Faulkner before him. It does lead me to raise, though, in the minds of those opposite, the importance of capability decisions being made in the best interests of our frontline force. This budget, indeed the last 3 budgets, have deferred and delayed a range of projects in the billions of dollars. Whilst many projects have been deferred, indeed John Kerrin in the AFR reported as many as $14 billion worth of deferment, there are 2 projects I wish to bring to the Minister's attention, particularly Land 121 Phase 3 and Phase 4. They stand out because the capability they're delivering, protected light and medium heavy vehicles, are being developed largely based on our tremendous experience using the Bushmaster protected mobility vehicle in Afghanistan. The Minister quite rightly praised the development of the Bushmaster. It has saved numerous Coalition lives. Indeed, as a vehicle, not a single Australian or indeed Coalition force has died in an attack or a blast whilst inside the Bushmaster vehicle. Land 121 Phase 3 and 4 vehicles are being developed in order to provide our troops on the ground with increased levels of protection within those light, medium to heavy vehicles. There has been significant delay in the preferred tenderer for those vehicles, and this is certainly causing us some concern. I therefore urge the Minister and the Minister for Defence Material to ensure these projects, amongst a raft of other important initiatives, are given priority. Our troops will benefit. There is no question about that. In terms of transition, the government knows it has the support of the opposition for a metrics-based, command-led staged transition to the ANA over the next 4 years. We acknowledge that post-withdrawal, expected to be fully complete by 2014, that there will be a Special Forces or Security Overwatch role that may well be required in support of capacity building or institutional training. We understand and we acknowledge the role of the Provincial Reconstruction Team. The government again enjoys the support of the opposition for the continuing engagement and growth of the Provincial Reconstruction Team. As our troop numbers decline, reconstruction must continue to grow as a basis for any successful counterinsurgency strategy. We reiterate our call to the government, which we have made a number of times, in the spirit of bipartisanship that the Minister knows he enjoys personally from me and from the opposition. We reiterate that it is our firm view that Commander JTF 633 be able to use all of his troops in the Middle East area of operations as he sees fit, without a cap of 1,550 in Afghanistan. If there must be a cap, let it be on the 24,550 or 2,450 in the MEO and give that extra level of flexibility to our commander on the ground. I note the Minister's considered and careful comments in respect to casualties, and they are in respect to civilian casualties, and they are certainly supported. Civilian casualties are, of course, regretted, but I know, speaking on behalf of all parliamentarians, we stand shoulder to shoulder with our fighting men and women. They fight in a very difficult asymmetric conflict. Every effort is made to limit civilian casualties, even though our enemy has been known to use them as shields, and by all accounts have even encouraged children onto a battlefield, knowing full well that we will cease fire and have done so in the past, whilst our enemy continues to engage regardless. We are in a bitter fight. We have a higher standard, and thus rightly we investigate all claims of civilian death as the Minister has outlined. However, we should not be pressured by outside organisations, or we should not seek to give up any of our sovereignty over these investigative matters. They are rightly matters for the Australian Government. We should always vigorously protect the integrity of our fighting soldiers and give them the benefit of the doubt in difficult and opaque fighting conditions. The welfare of our soldiers on the battlefield should always be our first priority. I reiterate my statement that I made with regard to detainee management last time we spoke in the House in March this year. The first priority of our detainee management framework has to be to ensure insurgents are removed from the battlefield and to allow for the most effective extraction of intelligence possible. Furthermore, the Coalition will continue to monitor, as we are, the range of issues regarding the ADF detainee management closely. I note that we have a purpose-built centre for detainee management. We continue, though, to hold detainees for only 4 days, whereas our ISAF partners in war hold detainees for up to 14 days. It is our firm view that this puts us at a disadvantage with respect to extracting the vital information and intelligence that is available from some of our detainees that we hold. The length of current time does not allow for the full interrogation of all of that information that we would seek to use. It doesn't give enough time for the full assessment of the intelligence value, and it may well be having an impact on our troop morale. We continue to call on the government to change this policy to bring it into line with our ISAF partners. Under current domestic law that responds to terrorism, we can hold suspects in Australia for longer than we can hold them in Afghanistan, where we're fighting at war. Frankly, I think this is simply nonsense. I again ask the Minister to urgently review these arrangements and provide a timeline for decision. I also urge the Minister to reassess their decision to not allow an interrogation capability to be forward deployed. I believe it's sorely needed and would certainly operate within all of our international obligations, our treaties and our conventions, and would bring us into line with our ISAF partners. In conclusion, I thank the Minister for being true to his word, for providing the House with an update which covers a raft of issues in considerable detail. The Minister knows he enjoys a strong bipartisan support for our engagement in our fight in Afghanistan. He enjoys strong bipartisan support in the mission for our troops, and especially for the welfare of our troops and the welfare of our families back at home. I also join the Minister in taking the opportunity to remember those 23 Australians who have lost their lives fighting for their country and for a world with a vision free of terrorism. I commend those 169 Defence Force personnel that have been wounded in action in line with their service. We will, as we've said on numerous occasions, continue to respond to and hold the government to account as the situation dictates. This, of course, is the role of a responsible opposition. But the Minister knows he certainly enjoys our bipartisan support as we go forward. I agree with the Minister. We must continue to hold our nerve, to maintain the courage of our convictions and hold the course. There is a plan, it's a set mission, it's articulated. There is a timeline for handover to the ANA based on metrics and command, and this course should be held. We must achieve our aim of strengthening our national security, which is the absolute basis upon which we have deployed forces in Afghanistan. And whilst we steel ourselves for possible further losses as we again enter another fighting season, and whilst we steel ourselves for possible retaliation from those that seek to undermine our very way of life, we also acknowledge the great successes we have achieved to date and the steadily increasing security that is being provided to everyday Afghanis because of the hard work of our men and women in uniform. Our fighting men and women enjoy the opposition's highest regard, and I'm sure our nation's greatest thanks.